Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for joining me again. Now, this is going to be a good one. We are going to get straight into it because I've got a lot to get through. I thought I would take a second away from the workshop. I'm down at the repair shop. Here we are. I can't show you too much that way because it's a busy barn this week and we've got stuff everywhere, items everywhere, people working on things all over the place. What a better time than ever to pick Pete's brain. The fact that you've clicked on this video maybe means that you are even slightly interested in learning how to solder. This video will hopefully give you an insight or a brief kind of introduction to soldering. Confession time now before Pete turns up. I honestly, before being on the repair shop, before being here, I have had never soldered anything in my life. I've never needed to. I've always had welders and I've always been able to just weld everything I needed basically. But working here, working on a few things here, and seeing Pete and Brenton, the way they fix things and the way they solder things was just so intriguing to me. I started getting the roll of solder that they've got, looking into different fluxes. I started looking into it, but even having Pete here guiding me through, it was still an absolute minefield. When you try to order a roll of solder, literally there is like 6 different pages of all different solders, all different thicknesses, different materials, different blends, and it's just an absolute minefield. I found myself buying the wrong solder with the wrong flux, trying to solder the wrong thing, and it just wouldn't work, and I was in a right old muddle. So I thought I would grab Pete. He's, bless him, he's given up his lunch break, which is very, very kind, and we are going to learn how to solder, or the basics of soldering, with a master.
Bit of solder, bit of flux. Job's a good one. The solder has run round nicely.
Pete's here, everybody. Pete Woods. Come on, Pete, say hello.
Hello, folks.
Start at the very beginning. I know this is probably difficult for you. Picture somebody that's never soldered anything in their life, no idea of what even soldering does. From what I understand, it sticks 2 pieces of metal together.
Yeah, from my GCE, I'm that old.
GCE? Yeah.
GCE, doing something about it, and I think I was sick at the time, and when I came back I couldn't understand what it was all about, and it was all about the metallurgy and everything.
Right, yeah, we don't need to, yeah, exactly.
I don't want to fiddle about
Let's
with
not
that.
go anywhere near the science of it.
Complicated.
What I like about soldering is when I'm welding something, the 2 pieces of metal that I'm welding together are becoming molten. They're at the edge of being molten. When you're soldering, the solder that you use melts at a lower temperature than the actual sort of parent metal.
That's
so there's
right,
no danger of actually melting the tube, or less danger.
Well, there is if you get too much heat in
if you do it wrong. Where do we start then? If somebody at home has got a project they want to solder, whether it's a piece of decoration, brass sheet into a decoration, or even copper pipes, plumbing, stuff like that, number 1 rule, where do you start?
Well, you're on to basic sort of plumbing almost.
Yeah.
Number 1, you need flux and you want to solder.
Okay, which we've got an array of.
There are tons of solders. There are tons of fluxes.
But why?
All of them do different purposes.
So it's a rule maybe then to wherever you get your solder from, ask them which flux works best with it.
That's right. If you've got a lead-free, you need a lead-free solder.
Okay.
If you use just ordinary lead solder, which isn't purely lead, it's pure,
but there's lead in it,
tin, bit of something else, then you need just the old-fashioned flux, which is great.
Which is this?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and I was only I must have been under 10 at the time, my granddad turning up with this little glass bottle of jollop and he poured it into a cup and he put some metal in and it dissolved it.
The metal?
It dissolved the metal. Obviously what he had brought home was some hydrochloric acid.
Oh my goodness.
And some bits of zinc.
Oh, I see.
and he was making flux.
Making flux.
And I suppose that was my first introduction into
this science, or
Yeah.
this world, basically.
And
yeah.
of course, basically, that's what that is.
That's
what that's based on.
For basic general soldering, something like that will work well.
Yes, because there's lots of pastes and stuff about.
Like so this is something you can pick up from Screwfix or like a hardware store. Electrical, or that's plumbing.
That is plumbing
flux.
stuff, but I would also use it more on electrical. A lot of the resins and stuff that you get are electrical.
Yeah.
But in saying that, there's two different types.
Oh my god. See, this is the problem. This is why it's so hard to actually figure out, to actually be able to learn to solder. There's so many different materials and products.
There's active and non-active.
Flux.
Flux. It's the same on if we go on to silver soldering as well. There's active and non-active.
Right.
Non-active doesn't clean the substrate.
Okay. Is that the material that you're soldering is clean enough, pristine, new,
That's right.
clean piece of metal?
Yeah, you can use a non-active
Active flux.
But if you are cleaning something, even that, look, you can see it's a bit dirty, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need something that's going to really attack it and clean it.
That's why you use bakers.
Yeah.
Right, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So especially when we're all working on old things, then inevitably the metal's going to be dirty.
Personal comment.
Well, this piece of brass sheet and this piece of brass tube, you hard or soft solder that. You can do either.
Yeah, if I wanted a really strong bond there, I'd hard solder it.
Okay.
If I wanted a really stronger hard bond again, I'd even go to brazing.
Yes, the next step on. Yeah.
Which is so we've got like different
or I'll weld it
temperatures. But it's brassed on.
That would be an issue. But we could still.
It would be an issue. You can weld copper, you know.
That's another video. Yes.
That's another video.
We're coming up to Christmas. Most people at home wanting to make a Christmas decoration.
Yeah.
So bits of copper sheet, a brass sheet, folding it into shapes with leaves, soldering with stalks on. Where can they get all this stuff from?
I'll be quite honest. Certain national stores.
We can say names here. It's YouTube.
Oh right. Oh yeah, it's YouTube.
Yeah.
Screwfix, Tool Station. A lot of them do the products.
Builders merchants.
Builders merchants, plumbers merchants.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes. It's just as cheap to buy it on the internet.
So if you know what you're searching for.
If you know what you're searching for. Now the lead solder comes in different grades.
Oh my goodness.
It gets worse, doesn't it?
Yeah.
60-40, 70-30.
Yeah.
And there's a few others that you can get that I've getting old, I can't remember. But it's to do with the temperature that they flow at, and also the 60-40 I use a lot because it's nice and thin when it flows at a low temperature.
So
it pulls in by capillary action.
Okay.
I also found that I wanted some ordinary Tinman solder in a hurry one day, which is quite a high melting point, stays quite solid on there. Not solid, but it doesn't run all over the place. And I actually wanted it in a hurry, and I couldn't find any locally, so I actually went into my automotive body place. I go and said, "Have you got any the lead for leading
for lead filling a car, lead loading a car?"
Yeah. He said, "Well, it's very expensive, Pete. It's about 20 quid a stick." Well, I got about 6 sticks out of it. I just melted it into a little V of a piece of right angle.
And just use that lead to solder with. Brilliant.
And it works fine. So you can get all these different mixtures.
So basically, for your DIYer at home wanting to get into soldering and looking to either fix something that needs soldering back together, 90% of the situations, a soft solder would do it.
Yeah.
60-40 if you want one with lead in.
That's
if you want a lead-free solder,
it's up to you.
You can do that as well. Which is something like this. This one's lead-free, and I think I got this from Screwfix or somewhere.
Yeah, they do a lot of that.
Yeah, that will do the job.
It's actually only needed, I believe, according to the regulations, where water that's going to be consumed actually will touch it.
Yeah, so copper pipe, all your copper pipes at home would be lead-free solder. So is there a benefit of having lead in there?
Well, yeah, it flows better.
It's better.
It flows better.
Okay, talking of flowing better, can we get into actually having a go at doing some soldering?
Yeah.
Heat source is something else we need to talk about. To be able to solder, yes, you need solder and flux, and obviously whatever you're trying to solder together, you're going to need to melt that solder, so you're going to need a heat source. The torch that Pete's using looks older than me, to be honest. How long have you had that?
That was given to us by the gas board when everybody went over to North Sea Gas. In the 1960s, wasn't it?
So you've had that since the 60s?
The little one that I use is the same as that, but it's out of a cook shop.
Oh yeah, for Del Creme Brulee.
Yeah.
That's it.
Never used it for a creme brulee in my life.
The torch that Pete's using has is actually hooked up to the compressor, so it's got oxygen going in as well. So it's running from, what's that? Just
propane.
Normal propane bottle, yeah. So it's using propane, which you can get from literally any petrol station has these orange canisters, and then by adding in a little bit of oxygen from the compressor, it makes the heat from the flame a lot more intense. So basically a lot quicker and a lot easier to introduce enough heat into the actual material. Is that fair?
Yeah.
But the catering one, I love the one that you mentioned, the one you can get from the catering shops. They've got them in B&Q, Homebase.
Yeah, Sainsbury's.
Sainsbury's even have them. Yeah, literally. You can literally go to Sainsbury's and get one of these little mini blow torches. As long as you're soldering something that's not too thick, you just need to introduce enough heat into it to melt the solder.
But it all depends how big the article is that you're trying to solder.
Basically, that is going to end up being a big heat sink.
That's right.
Soak the heat. So as you're heating here, you're trying to stick that tube onto there. The heat is going to be sort of in here. You're going to focus the heat around here, but it's going to be creeping away, and this whole sheet will end up getting quite hot.
Well, that's on there.
Bingo! Look at that.
It's on there quite solid. It is a bit messy. Yeah, I put too much on there. But
this doesn't matter. It's the technique. It's just
when cleaned up. But you can see how well with the bakers that flowed.
Yeah.
On the brass.
Looks like you're having fun, Pete.
Yeah, it's interesting because in theory I shouldn't be able to do this. It's a rusty old bit of steel. Look at it going now. It's taking a bit of time. Look at that.
It's beautiful. Never knew you were such a romantic. Pete, you made that look very easy, but we need to talk about. We've covered flux. We've covered solder.
Yeah.
We've kind of covered heat source. Technique is the next thing we need to talk about. Start from the beginning. If, say, somebody's seen this, that is actually really cool, because that could easily be a Christmas decoration or something in the garden, or it could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody's bought the blowtorch, they've bought the flux, they've got the solder, they've got the rusty piece of metal. How do you do it? How do you solder two things together?
The main thing is you put the heat onto your substrate, which is your metal.
The metal, the two pieces of metal.
Yeah, you get them to the right temperature first before you try adding the lead. Otherwise you just end up with big blobs.
You're there, you're heating it up, that just blobs off and then pulls up and sits in a little ball.
I'll try and do some bad soldering for you.
Right, so you are a novice. Go back 80, 90 years, you know, you're a kid.
What you got to do is make sure that is hot enough. You can usually tell because if you're using the flux, it will bubble. But if you not hot enough and you try just melting that on there
with no flux.
No flux or anything. Look, well, you end up with a blob.
And no matter how much heat, that's the other tempting thing. The next thing that I'm guilty of, this is turning into a confessions video. The next thing I'm guilty of is having that situation and it not flowing where I want it to flow, and just keep introducing more and more heat. Bigger blowtorch, more heat,
and then it's all over the place.
It distorts, it bends up, it melts, and then it goes everywhere apart from where you want it to go.
That, I mean, you've got here a fairly thin piece of brass, so it's not taking long to heat. But look, you just do a nice little puddle.
So would you say, from watching you do this, flux is key to keeping the material an active flux?
I always use active flux because I'm a bit lazy.
We're always working with rusty old bits.
Yeah, I tend not to clean stuff off as much as I should. Let's see if that'll work now. It might and it might not. You never know.
Perfect, look.
Look at that.
Yeah, done. It could be a little table decoration or anything, couldn't it? You know when people have their little name, what they're called? Like a
name card?
Name card on the table, little sprig like that.
Looks like it's been made by Bodgett and Leggett, doesn't it?
That's us. Yeah.
Steel.
Any kind of mild steel, as long as it's clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can solder.
Yeah.
Copper, obviously. Yeah. Copper pipes in your house, you can solder.
You can use that to make things.
Can you solder copper to steel?
Yes.
Brass to copper? Any
dissimilar metals.
Any dissimilar metals, fine, which again is a benefit over
welding.
When
you think about it, in the old days, certain things used to come in steel pipes, like the water.
Yeah.
Then go into copper pipes.
Yeah.
And they used to put the lead joint, do you remember? And you used to do it with a moleskin.
Yeah.
Exactly the same kind of thing as this, only you get it to a certain temperature where you can shape it.
So the lead is like a link between the two dissimilar metals.
That's right.
Sticking to both of them and holding them together.
And if they had soldered straight the dissimilar metals, you get corrosion, and you're in trouble.
Any old piece of as long as it's not too thick, I would say that's probably a good thing to start, because it's, again, you just need to get it hot enough.
If it was thick, you would need, number one, more heat.
Yeah.
But number two, I think you've got to look at the design and say, well, why have I got it that thick? Because this is not really built for heavy duty solder. This is not a heavy duty solder.
Fine. Another benefit of soldering, which is really helpful, actually in your craft and what you do of making instruments.
Yeah.
When I weld something together, the only way I'm getting them apart is grinding it, cutting it off.
Yeah.
Solder has got a fantastic ability of being reversible.
Wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Because I know in the old days, my firm used to make solid silver bugles.
Okay.
We were about the only people that could have a solid silver bugle, and it was still hallmarked. But every single piece was hallmarked separately, because we told the hall in London, we do the hallmarking.
Yeah.
We had to take it apart to repair it, because putting lead on there would have made it not a hallmarkable quality.
Because it's not solid silver.
Yeah, so all the joints to make the tubing were all silver joints. But all the separate pieces used to go up. They used to have a little drawing say, yeah, all the bits are here.
Yeah.
And they used to hallmark every individual bit. We used to have it back.
Then lead solder it together.
How
funny. Gone.
If I put that on a polishing mop,
it's gone. Yeah.
It's gone.
That's why I think this is such a good a skill for people to have if they're getting into doing crafts, or they want to have a go at DIY, making their own decorations and things, or sculptures, whatever it may be. It's completely, if you do it wrong, you can heat it up, take it back off.
Piece of cake.
Clean it up, wire wool, a piece of wire wool, Scotch Brite, anything like that, sand it down, and you can just change your mind.
That's right, and you can start again.
The last thing we need to talk about is how you hold things together, which is, again, another confession of mine. I've struggled so much, and I've ended up stacking bits of metal block and dollies onto pieces to try and hold this thing together to solder it together, because as you introduce heat to metal, it moves, it distorts, it heats, it twists, and you always carry around that bale of rusty old wire with you.
That is a small one. You ought to see the one I got.
Why though? Why? How does this work?
It is wire as opposed to rod or anything.
This is steel wire.
Steel wire. And then you let it go rusty.
Yeah.
We saw how much trouble I had to go to with the fluid to make it
because it's so rusty.
So when you're putting an instrument together, you can tie it with that. That's why we call it tying wire. Then we can solder the instrument and remove that, just untwist it or cut it off.
So you'll actually use this wire to twist, like grab the end of it and literally wrap it around the two pieces you're trying to solder.
Yeah.
Twist it together, hold it nice and tight
We
with that.
always do it like that, because if you twist it, we find that if you twist just a single strand, it'll just break off.
Okay, so twist two together.
Just two together, throw them on the floor and they work better.
Perfect.
Don't use cable ties.
No, because they're made of plastic.
I stupidly tried it once and I had to clean all the plastic off.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Well, I just hope it's useful.
It absolutely is. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Drums, brass, woodwind, everything.
Yeah.
Where did that, going back, I know it's a long time ago, going back to you being a little boy, where did it all start?
When I left school,